The Cincinnati Bengals host the current number one seed in the AFC. Let's talk keys to victory.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. Together we make up your only daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen as we get into this game preview. Take a look at the matchups on both sides of the ball that are going to be important, and some of the other factors that aren't necessarily matchups, but maybe are scheme dependent or coaching dependent that may be very impactful in determining the outcome of this game. What we're not going to talk about today, James, are certain hot takes about bounties on certain quarterbacks that certain former players have proclaimed on Thursday, disgracing their employer. We are going to talk about football because we don't have time for all that other stuff. And we've talked about this week, James.
Mhm.
To me, this is a game that is very likely, if it is going to go in the Bengals' favor, to boil down to variance. I would welcome the pleasant surprise of a Green Bay sort of game where these teams are in a tight contest and it's not this offensive shootout and it goes that way instead. But for me, this is a more complete Kansas City team. I've said this, and I think it's a big challenge for the Bengals, who also are coming off of another hot stretch of play, winning two in a row, putting up 41 against the Ravens. Joe Burrow playing the best ball of the year and being a superhero in his own right, going against Patrick Mahomes, who has been the superhero quarterback for the last 2 years in the NFL. So to me, I'm looking at what are the swing plays. That's my
Mhm.
first thought when I think of this game. I said it yesterday, and I'm still there. And honestly, when I've thought this in the past, there haven't been those big swing plays. And so I've been wrong about this quite frequently in the past when I've had this feeling, but it's the feeling I have again this week.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because of the snowball effect that happens when you make mistakes against the Chiefs. I think that's why you're thinking of the swing plays. And obviously the Bengals could do that and force turnovers and take advantage of turnovers and all of that. But that's why I think it's even more of a thing this week. Because if you get off to a slow start, well, that's one thing, right? If you punt on your first possession or two. It's a whole nother thing if it's fumble, pick six, just an a touchdown for the Chiefs, then an interception, then a field goal for the Chiefs. You look up, it's 10-0. That's not where you want to be against this defense or this offense, this team in general. So, I think this is a game that could be defined by swing plays. The good news is a lot of people think of the Chiefs, and rightfully so, and it's this explosive offense, and it is. I think the Bengals can keep up explosive wise. I think they have just as much dynamite in their trunk as as Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs do in different ways, but I think they do. And so there is a reasonable, realistic path to victory, even though the Bengals are underdogs in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I'm 100% not writing this game off. I don't want to give that impression at all. This isn't a game that I think is unwinnable. This isn't a game that I'm penciling in even as a loss. This is a game that I think could and should be very competitive. I just can see that there are some matchups, right, that don't necessarily g- line up in the Bengals' favor. That being said, I do think that they're playing better football now. And I
Mhm.
think that the Ravens' victory showed the level at which they can play, but this is a much better defense. And so I'm not expecting them to have this easy time where Joe Burrow's, extending plays and finding easy openings. If he does, great. I think we'll still
Mhm.
see some of that because that's what he's done lately. I think that is here to stay. I think his processing, I think his evasiveness, I think these things are there. But I think that you have a stickier secondary and they're healthy. And we heard Chris yesterday on the crossover talk about Javarius Ward getting healthy. And a lot of Bengals fans probably don't really know who that guy is. He's pretty good. He's a good corner. He doesn't get beat deep a ton. And On the other side, Mike Hughes, has been really good this year. His career, not so much. So you would think there's something there to exploit, but Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill, this is a really solid secondary group again. And we're
Yeah.
talking about, I think, in the same conversation with Denver. They haven't had the same success all year, but you look back like their last 8 games when they've been on this winning streak, and the only team that's really put up points against them is the Chargers. Now, do I think that the Bengals offense can produce the way the Chargers offense can produce? Yes, I do. I think they'll have to do it in slightly different ways. I'm just saying that from a matchup perspective, there's a little bit more here that is going to challenge them in a holistic perspective than they've seen maybe all year.
I think Denver's better, but I also think that the Bengals mindset going into Denver was
Very
we're
different.
we're going to have to just escape with a win and play with score 15 points and bank on Evan McPherson and our special teams. And it's okay to punt. And we just want to avoid the big pick 6 turnover type play. And then on defense, you win the game. And they did, and they got it done. This can't be that. You know what this is? You mentioned earlier this week in our post-game show, LSU Burrow. Well, this is Alabama, Joe. You need to ball out just like you did against Alabama with the SEC on the line. And if you do that, then buckle up, baby, because it's about to be a fun Sunday at Paul Brown Stadium. I don't know who's going to win because Patrick Mahomes is certainly capable of going blow for blow, but that's what they need, and that's the path. And if he plays the trajectory he's been on, and we looked at the stats earlier this week. If you missed it, you should, 1, subscribe if you haven't, 2, go back and listen. And Jake, you pointed out the past 5 games. And so the past 5 games, that needs to become 7. And the next 2 weeks, the Bengals, they have to have Burrow play at an extremely high level to win, because he could play his best game of his career on Sunday and they could lose. I don't think that's the case against Cleveland. I don't think that's the case most days when the Bengals take the field. If he's playing his best ball, normally they're going to win. But I think that this team, this quarterback, this coaching staff in Kansas City, that defense that you mentioned, they are capable of still winning and forcing that turnover when it's 45-44 with the game on the line, even though it wouldn't be Burrow's fault.
And we've seen them do this year against Aaron Rodgers, who has been the second most turnover avoidant quarterback in the NFL by PFF's turnover worthy plays. I was looking at that this morning because I was looking at the luck on those. Patrick Mahomes had a lot of really bad luck early in the year. His luck has turned around. He's not putting the ball in danger very much. But Aaron Rodgers has thrown like 4 picks this year, and they got Aaron Rodgers, and they held Aaron Rodgers in check. And I think they were missing some guys in that game, and the Chiefs are probably comparatively slightly healthier, but they did it, and they got that takeaway. So who's to say they can't do it again, right? And so we should probably talk a little bit more about some of the defensive matchups. But before we get there, I think that your point about the mindset is a really good one, and that's going to be really telling this week. Is how do the Bengals try to attack the Chiefs on offense? Because last week we saw the highest neutral pass rate in Joe Burrow's career. Went great. And when Joe Burrow gets the opportunity to throw on early downs, it's going to go pretty well. I think it's a good idea. It's when he needs a drop back pass and need to have it situations that things have been dicey, especially in protection. And I do still have my concerns about protection, but I do think that, again, this week they need to play. I mean, this is pretty basic stuff. Play through your best player. Your best player right now is Joe Burrow, and let him use these skill guys you've put around him and make his mark on the game, and don't take the game out of his hands really at any moment. And beyond that, they signed a new long snapper to the practice squad today. Let's keep the long snapper off the field for the entire game, right? So these are some initial thoughts. We'll get further into some of these matchups, further into some of the things the Bengals will have to do to try to contain Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and keep this game close, coming up next.
But first, I got to tell you about the #1 protein bar on the planet. If the Bengals want to beat the Chiefs, man, hopefully they've been on the Built Bar diet all week. And I have a Built Bar each and every day. and you're talking about a chocolate bar. That's right, chocolate bar. It's covered in 100% chocolate. That's high in protein, low in sugar, low in calories. I'm looking right now. Caramel almond delight, 16 grams of protein, 150 calories. Gluten-free for those that have asked. I know some have on Twitter asked, and I don't know if I actually got back to you. So there you go. That's me getting back to you. So check out Built Bars right now. New year, new you. You can get it done right now. It's going to be New Year, same me for me, because it's the best protein bar on the planet. And I'm not stopping the Built Bar plan. All you got to do to check them out is go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. It is that simple. Built.com, promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off. You save money, you get healthier, and you add an awesome snack, the number one protein bar on the planet, Built Bar.
Hold that pose. For those watching on YouTube, James holding that Built Bar up real proud, like a proud dad. Let's talk defense for a little bit here, James. We're going to circle back, probably hit the offense a little bit more at the tail end of the show as we get into our predictions and talk about some of the coaching aspects of the game. But as we go to the defense, a couple of very big notes from the Bengals as this week has gone on. Logan Wilson again suited up for practice on Thursday. We are recording before the official report is out, but he was out there in a full jersey, so no reason to expect that things have gone awry yet. Keep an eye on the injury report. We'll see if that changes. But the big ones, well, the big one is the big guy in the middle, DJ Reader, on the active roster, off the COVID list. He's back. Also, Wyatt Ray back, which is helpful depth. Wyatt Ray, a target of unnecessary bullying, I think, from some Bengals fans. He's been just fine this year. Khalid Kareem also working his way back from a concussion. So they look to be at full strength in the trenches. And the Kansas City Chiefs have a really good offensive line. I think that there are some vulnerabilities that you can attack. I'm looking forward to DJ Reader against Creed Humphrey, Joe Tooney, and Trey Smith. I think that the veteran has been playing really good football this year. I'm looking forward to seeing if Larry Ogunjobi can have one of those splash plays. And Trey Hendrickson against Brown on the left side. You kind of like Hendrickson's speed around the edge. And the fact that they're healthy, we saw what happened when DJ Reader wasn't playing. And if the Chiefs do want to try to keep the Bengals off balance and try to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire and these running backs going, Gore, who's the bigger guy, going in the run game to try to keep the Bengals defense honest, well, having DJ Reader there lets you be a lot more comfortable playing six in the box and dropping more guys into coverage. So big news that DJ Reader's returning this week.
For sure. That was my first thought is, okay, because the last thing you want is the Chiefs to be able to run the ball early. That's a nightmare, okay? Or run the ball at all, but certainly early when we're talking about, getting ahead and things like that for the Bengals and getting the advantage. And so, yeah, having DJ Reader, it's huge, huge, huge. And something Lou Anarumo talked about on Thursday is, well, we're going to have to pressure Pat Mahomes because there's really no other way to stop him. And how big of a unicorn Travis Kelce is, how hard it is to keep up with Tyreek Hill. By the way, Chidobe Awuzie said, I asked him this. I was like, are you the fastest guy on the team? Because he said, don't sleep on my speed now, basically. And I was like, all right, well, are you the fastest on the team? He said, yeah, he's the fastest on the team. He thinks Trey Wayne's a second. So the Bengals have their speedy cornerbacks. And yet Lou Anarumo, I think, who was it? I think it was Jeff Hobson asked Lou Anarumo about that. Like, yeah, will Awuzie be able to catch Hill? And Lou almost laughed and was like, if he gets behind you, he's behind you. We're talking about an Olympic sprinter. And he was dead serious. And he deadpanned. He was like, he's different. And he is, right? So, but yes, it's good to have DJ Reader back and Wyatt Ray back and all hands on deck because they really are going to have to find a way to get some kind of heat on Patrick Mahomes. And if they don't do that, well, then it's not first to 30. You know how I've talked about 30 all year. It's first to 50. So if you want a first to 50 game, don't pressure Pat because that's what you're going to have to deal with.
It's kind of crazy, actually, how healthy the Bengals are right now. Like the important players that are missing, Brandon Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Darius Phillips, Riley Reif. Riley Reif certainly the most important out of those, but the fact that they're this healthy
Jermaine
on
Pratt
defense,
right now.
Jermaine Pratt, sure. on COVID. The fact that they're this healthy, relatively speaking, this late in the season for this game compared to previous years, I
Mhm.
mean, absolute difference maker. And especially with their key guys like Hendrickson, who's still probably dealing with the back stuff. You saw him
Mhm.
deal with it a little bit last week, and DJ Reader, Sam Hubbard, et cetera, on the defensive line and the corners, where last year they were scraping the streets for players.
And Jake, that's why they have to take advantage of this, because you don't know what next year is going to be. You don't know what the year after is going to be. Ask the people in Cleveland. They thought, oh man, the Browns won a playoff game and they gave the Chiefs all they could handle. And oh, we're going to add this piece and this piece and this piece. And it is their time. And well, maybe not. And maybe they're going to be doing this quarterback cycle again. And you know how all things change. And I'm not saying the Bengals are in the same boat, but we've seen it with the Bengals. Oh, after the '05 season. Oh, they're going to make a run. It's going to be great. The Andy Dalton era. Oh, it can end. Things can snowball. Things can change. And so while I think this group is on the up and up, and there's a lot of reasons to be excited about the future, I don't give a damn about the future today. I'm not worried about the draft or free agency or anything. I'm worried about, can this team take advantage of the health they've been given? Because you're right. I don't think they will be this healthy in week 17, maybe for the rest of Joe Burrow's career, which is kind of crazy to say, but it might be true. And so you want to take advantage of those opportunities when they're there. Yes, they're young. Yes, the coaching staff is young. Yes, they're inexperienced at key spots. I get it. You also want to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And hopefully the health helps. It'll be really interesting to see how they tackle, literally and in terms of coverage, Tyreek Hill,
Yep.
because Lou Anarumo talking about him. He's talking about, like, you compare him to guys like AJ Green and DK Metcalf. He's like, they're like lifted trucks,
Mhm.
and Tyreek Hill lower to the ground. He's like a Ferrari. It's not just that he's fast; it's that he also has that insane agility and he can
Yep.
stop. And so you got to deal with that. And he's lining up in the slot. And if they put him in the slot, what do you do with Mike Hilton? Right? Do you put Cheeto in the slot and then put Trey Waynes and an Eli Apple outside and take Mike Hilton off the field? Do you put Mike Hilton over Travis Kelce and put four corners on the field? It's going to be really interesting. Maybe just a safety instead, I guess. But it's going to be really interesting to see how they choose to, because Mike Hilton's given up what, a foot of height to Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite a foot, but you get the idea. Like, there are matchup problems there that is going to require a creative approach from Lou, whether it's allocating the safety to keep him capped on Tyreek Hill, which they did to Marquise Brown last
Mhm.
week in Baltimore, against Baltimore, or if they're going to try to roll that safety and pay extra attention to Kelce. And then, that's how they're giving up all those slants early in the game. And the Rashad Bateman touchdown is they're paying extra attention to the tight end. And so a little bit of pick your poison there.
Mhm.
And, to your point about pressuring Mahomes, you can't blitz him. Chris was right about that yesterday. He's only been blitzed about 15% of the time this year. They got to find a way to get home with four. Talked a
Mhm.
lot about that with Mike a couple days ago on the film review episode at the end. So go check that out if you want to see more of that conversation. But to reiterate again, the changes we've seen this year with regards to the defensive line getting home with twists and stunts, and despite having not incredible individual win rates, still generating a high degree of pressure and getting sacks, that will be lovely to show up again this week, because they're going to be a little bit limited, I think, in what they can do blitzing. Game script going to be a factor as well, James. I think coaching going to be a big factor. We'll wrap up our keys to victory as we continue to preview the Kansas City Chiefs coming to Cincinnati coming up next.
BetOnline has you covered as 2021 ends and 2022 begins with all of the props, odds, and lines like never before. So whether it's the college football playoff and my UC Bearcats about to give Bama a beatdown, or if it's the Bengals, Chiefs, anything in between, go to betonline.ag and wager right now. And the best part is, when you sign up, you're going to get a 50% deposit match, a 50% welcome bonus. That's free with promo code Locked On. That's all you got to do is go to betonline.ag. Use promo code Locked On. You're going to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So whether it's the NBA, whether it's college football, whether it's Bengals, Chiefs, or any other NFL Week 17 matchup, you can wager on everything. betonline.ag. BetOnline is the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Again, be sure to use that promo code Locked On to get a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts. Jake, real quick, and I know you're about to go, but I don't want to forget it. People are going to hate me for saying this. It is true. You mentioned it at the end of segment 2. I think this is where Trey Waynes either makes his money or just gets all the way into the doghouse. Like he's in the doghouse, but hasn't shut the door yet. Is he going to pop out of the doghouse and be like, surprise, this is the cornerback that you wanted when you signed me 2 years ago? Or is he going to lock the door and seal it shut and beg for a Built Bar every other Wednesday? I don't know. But I think he is a big part of this game because he's speedy. He's played against Tyreek Hill in this offense before. And he's another veteran, hopefully good tackling defensive back that I think you can use to your advantage if he's ready to go and ready to play at a decent level.
Yeah, it's a good point, and that's actually where I was going to go first before we talk about coaching and the decisions
Gotcha.
that Zach's going to make.
Great
Because
minds.
not Trey Wayne specifically, but I was going to ask you about X factors and because I think that's kind of what game script and coaching these are non-matchup things and potential X factors in the game where could be a way the game swings. So that's where I was going to go is ask you, outside of the offense defense matchups we're talking about, what you kind of think were some of the big swing factors in this game, because I think those swing factors, if the game's going to go the Bengals way, could be really important.
Yeah, that's certainly one X factor for sure. Would be Waynes, I think, seriously, because he can run. Hopefully, he can cover. He certainly can tackle. And so, if he's on Hill, you need him to tackle him. Or if he's on Kelce potentially. I mean, he gives up a lot of weight. You want to talk about that to Kelce, and I don't think it'll be one-on-one against him a ton. But you never know, right? I mean, they put Trey Flowers on who was it Mark Andrews in that first matchup against Baltimore, and I know Flowers is big and he looks like a damn basketball player. It looks like he should be playing on the Warriors, but still, you never know. Outside of that, offensively, I'll give you an interesting one. A lot of people are going to say CJ Uzomah as an X factor, and that's fair. I think he could have a big game. You have the three-headed monster at receiver. We have Joe Mixon.
It's Chris Evans, isn't it?
It's Chris Evans time. If there's ever going to be a game where he matters, it's now, where you get him the ball in space. And I don't know if he fell out of favor after that ankle, after he got injured, and was it ankle or hamstring? One of the two. It was a leg injury. But wouldn't this be the game where you'd split him out and put him in the slot and do different things with, if you were going to, because I would leave it all out there. I would throw everything at the Chiefs if I'm Zach Taylor. I would have the entire playbook open. I would throw it all out there. And if that's the case, you and I both agree that Chris Evans has talent. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see that, or a football genius. So it's time to unleash him a little bit, because there aren't really many. It's not like there's a wide receiver that I can say, unleash Trent Taylor. Get the hell out of here with that. I'm not saying that. Really, the only one that they haven't utilized to their full potential thus far, I think, is Chris Evans.
Yeah, I think that even if it's not Chris Evans specifically, he needs to be in his bag. Zach Taylor needs to be deep in his bag and use everything. And it's not like they haven't shown things at this point in the year. I think it was Dan Pitcher talking to Lap about this. We have 15 weeks of film at this point. Like offense, 16. This is week 17. We've seen everything we're going to see from defenses, except maybe a couple wrinkles. That every week there's something a little bit new. Maybe that'll get put in. The Bengals need to be to use project management terminology that I hate, agile. It can't take you 2 drives to adjust if you're having issues with your initial approach to the game. You can't stay. So say, for example, they think Joe Mixon can go into this game and average like 8 yards per carry. They think they've identified the weakness of the Chiefs defense, and it's wide zone to the left side behind Jonah Williams and Quentin Spain, just for the sake of
Example.
argument.
Yep.
And if it works, great. You can stay with that. It's actually fine. If you're running the ball for 6-7 yards a pop, have at it. I don't know if that's going to be the case, which is why I say let Joe Burrow cook. And I think that Joe Burrow's got to be a big part of this game. You're going to need the explosive plays because even if you are averaging seven yards a carry, you get stuck once and now you're behind the chains. And that's how things can spiral out of control. But the point I'm making is if they believe that something will work and it very quickly doesn't work, let's move on. And I know that sometimes plays just go wrong because of a detail not getting executed, but I just want to see the adjustments on the fly. And I think they've been pretty good about this for the most part in the last few games. But when it's a team like the Chiefs, when they're coached by Andy Reid, does a great job with the offense, has figured out how to deal with what defenses are putting in front of him, it's going to be hard to confuse Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And so where they're going to be very good at identifying what you're doing, adapting to it and beating it, I think. And hopefully the Bengals can find ways to make these explosive swing plays to make me wrong here. You need to do the same thing on offense and keep up. And so that to me is a big deal in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This game reminds me of November. I looked up the date, so I'm going to make sure I get this right. November 20th, 2005, when the up-and-coming Carson Palmer-led Cincinnati Bengals hosted Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts won that game 45-37. It was, I believe it was a 425 or 405 kick. And Chad Johnson proposed to a cheerleader. You never really felt like the Bengals were going to win the game, but they hung around because they couldn't stop Manning, and he wasn't going to turn the ball over, and that's what that defense did. They couldn't stop anybody, but they forced turnovers, if you remember. And that game was so much damn fun, and I wonder if this game is going to feel like that one. And if so, there's going to be a point where Zach Taylor's going to have to say, all right, we're going to call this play on 4th and 1 that isn't a handoff to Joe Mixon that's very predictable or isn't such a predictable insert whatever. They may have to run a fake punt. Like there might be a time because those are the swing plays you're talking about, and they may have to force the swing play. It might not be an obvious turnover, pick six, something like that. It might be something more aggressive that you don't see initially, and that they force, and that it leads to a momentum shift because it's really hard to win games like that. And I'm not saying this defense can't stop Mahomes here and there, but if you're going into it expecting to hold Mahomes to 20, you're going to lose. It's not going to happen. 30 is the absolute minimum of minimum. And that might be if Mahomes misses a quarter in my eyes. So that's what this game reminds me of. And to your point, they're going to have to adjust on the fly, but they have to be really aggressive. And that doesn't mean go for it on every single 4th down ever, by the way, in my eyes. I think you can be smart with that. I don't think you want to necessarily leave points on the field all the time either. There's going to be a balance for sure. Don't go full Staley. I know you might have liked, I don't want full Staley. There's a nice balance in between where you can get points and still be aggressive and still go for it without shooting yourself in the foot 8 times.
Yeah, I think that to me, the 4th down decision making shouldn't change in this game. It shouldn't change because to me, 4th down decision making should be constant. What should change is early down decision making, and don't let yourself, 4th and 15 from the 40-yard line, you're still not going for it, right? 4th and 15 from their 35, you're still kicking a field goal there. You're not going for it. It's the 4th and 2s, the 4th and 3s, the short yardage in plus field position. Those decisions shouldn't change, right? I do like your comparison though. Going back to that Colts Bengals game, the Bengals, I remember I was watching that game at a friend's house. I remember that game. I was so frustrated because they just couldn't get a stop when they needed it, or when they did get a stop, they couldn't answer. At halftime in that game, the score was 35-27. The Bengals scored going into the half with 12 seconds left. Then they scored getting out of the half to take, well, no, they didn't even take the lead. They were down by 1, 35-34. at
and
that
they
point,
couldn't
and they
lose it.
won in and out of the half, and that's the last time they kicked the field goal later in the game, and they couldn't get it
They kicked
going
the
in the
field
second
goal.
half
Yeah, they kicked the field goal at the end to
to
cut it
kick an
to.
onside. Yeah,
Yeah, it looked better than it was. Yeah, because it just never felt like they were going to get over the hump because they couldn't stop Peyton.
and they did get a pick in that game. And
Did they? I
Carson
couldn't
threw one
remember that.
too. It wasn't
Yeah.
enough. What stands out to me in this game, I'm looking at the box score right now. Both quarterbacks sacked one time each. Both quarterbacks had 60+ yard plays. Uh, and I
Play
think
to Chad.
Dallas Clark had a 56-yard catch, and Reggie Wayne, this is one that I remember, had a 66-yard touchdown, I believe. Chad, 68-yard touchdown. Chad in that game, 8 catches, 189 and a touchdown, just going off.
Yeah.
But what I like here, going back to the X factor conversation, and Chris is playing running back. Chris Perry, 8 carries, 82 yards, 4 catches, 41 yards in that game, and he
From
made the
where?
most.
From
He made the
Michigan.
most. Yeah, Chris from Michigan at running back. Go do some work.
That's right.
James, let's get our
Um,
predictions real quick here while we get to wrapping up.
yeah. So I expect it to kind of go the same way as that game. Maybe it'll feel closer than that one did. I remember not feeling like the Bengals are really in it for most of that second half. And if you're down by 11 and not moving the ball well enough and not scoring, that's going to be the case. I think it's close. I think Joe Burrow balls out. I think that the Bengals are hanging around. But to me, the Chiefs have everything you could want. Everything from coaching to the quarterback to the big two weapons wise. And that's the Bengals' edge, right? Is they have more options, I think higher end options from weapon 3 on at the skill positions, if you want to look at it that way. But I think it's just going to be a tad too much for them to beat the Chiefs on Sunday. So give me Kansas City 41, Bengals 34 in a fun game, a back and forth game, in a game where in the fourth quarter it will have yet to be decided. Unfortunately, I think they come up just a tad short, and we're talking about at least one more week for them to clinch the division and clinch a playoff spot.
I would really enjoy it if it's a competitive game going back and forth. You could totally see it being, if the Bengals offense goes the way that it should go, a whoever has a ball last kind of situation with these guys. And the thing that I like about this game, a couple of X factors we haven't really talked about. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we haven't talked about. Um, catching the ball out of the backfield. Same for Williams, is it? Darrell Williams, who's been a pretty good.
Well, yeah, Williams. They have a couple different backs, but Williams is the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked about the Chiefs running backs at all because you're so worried about Hill and Kelce, but Burrow talked about, you got to watch these guys out of the backfield too. But um, where I was going was other X factors. One of them, going to be a lot of kickoffs in this game, potentially. Trent Taylor returning kicks, I guess. Let's make sure that we're cleaning the kicking game on both sides. Haven't really talked about that one. And the reason that this occurs to me is I looked back at that Colts game. There were like 10 kickoffs for each
Mhm.
team. So
Yeah.
got to be cleaning that phase of the game. And the other thing is Joe Burrow. The Joe Burrow edge. The Joe Burrow at LSU. You talked about beating Alabama,
Yep.
going to the playoff. And the Clemson game where Clemson punched him in the mouth. They
Yep.
really did early, and it wasn't enough. And so I think that LSU team, that Clemson game, a little bit different, but similar in terms of the caliber of players at quarterback, and even in that Alabama game too at the time, playing at a high level at Alabama. The caliber of quarterback, the caliber of defense, and look, if Joe Burrow can make a run here like he did in that year at LSU, that's how you know this team is here to stay, as
Mhm.
health and all these other things aside. And that's what, the best case outcome that we're really looking forward to would be on Sunday. We'll be back on Sunday after the game. We'll get you all of our post-game insights, reactions, and more. James will be coming to you from Paul Brown Stadium. Until then, Bengals fans,
Happy New Year, by the way.
I was
Love you
going to say
guys.
that. Happy New
Damn it.
Year. Thanks so much to everybody who's listened and stuck with us this year and everybody that's new. Hope y'all enjoy your New Year weekend. Stay safe out there. Hoo day and have a good one.